Crafton discussion meeting for January 14, 2019. Call to order. Flag salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amendola. Mr. Kraus.
Here.
Ms. Perry. Here. Ms. Lazar. Ms. Damitz. Here. Mr. Rosario.
Here.
Mr. Lavasser.
Here.
Mayor Bloom.
Here.
Solicitor Corbold.
Here.
And Engineer Minsterman.
Here.
Public Works Director Kazarowski.
Here.
All right.
All right, thank you. Moving forward, may I have the approval of the bills list dated January 14, 2019?
Seconded.
Do I hear any discussion?
Yes. The animal control, can we get a report on what they do? Because we're operating without a budget, is there a difference in the charge on that?
What are you, operating without a budget as in?
I mean, the contract's done.
Oh, okay, I will look into that, but in general, I'll double check and make sure that that expired, but typically it's a $300 retainer per month. And then if there are any additional activities, like I guess dog retrieval would be one, and
They
then
only
that's
do dogs,
charged.
they said they don't do cats, why?
I could double check on that. I haven't gotten detail on why they do only dog services, but I can always look into it.
Okay. Do I hear any other comments, questions? Hearing none. May I have the approval? All in favor? Aye. All that opposed? All right. Approval of the bills list. Moving forward, the approval of the ratified bills list for December 31st, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Hear any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? All right, moving forward with the approval of the minutes for December 10th, 2018.
So moved. Second.
Hear any comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? All right. Just a brief note, we had an executive session, what day was that?
December 14th.
December 14th to discuss personnel. The manager is going to have her report and we'll detail that. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew we had an exec session. Moving forward with citizen comments. At this time, citizens may address the Borough Council on any issue appearing on today's agenda. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Comments and non-agenda items will be taken at the end of tonight's meeting. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 10 minutes. Speakers are asked to use the microphone at the speaker stand, clearly state their name, and address the record, and keep comments brief and to the point. Please spell your name for the record. Alrighty. Here's the sign-up sheet. Parking. Anything on parking? I don't think so. Mr. Saba, your comments will have to wait to the end section. Thank you. All right, moving forward with the mayor's report.
I'm making a request to council for the Public Works and the authorization to check into restricting parking on Johnston Street to one side as a fire safety issue. The street is a very narrow street that permits two-side parking, and it's virtually, in an emergency situation, would be a very dangerous situation to get emergency equipment down Johnston Street from Crafton Boulevard in the event of a fire. The street could handle one-side parking, but I'm requesting to council to authorize Public Works and the police department to check Johnson Street and come back with a report and possibly amending the ordinance, the parking ordinance, to restrict it to one side.
Okay.
And that engineer have to do that?
All right. So what's the legal steps forward to make the change?
You'll need to conduct a traffic study, so the police can do that, engineer can do that, whatever your process is.
All right. Can we move forward with a motion to do that, or do we?
Yeah, I think you should.
All right. All right. When we get to the business agenda, we'll have a motion. So let's write a brief motion to take care of that. Okay?
Okay?
All right. Anything else? How was Christmas?
It was a great Christmas. I was home this year, so it was good. Good to be home.
New Year's pretty calm. I think everything's pretty calm.
Yeah, it was pretty quiet. Nothing from the police standpoint that was reported on. It was a pretty quiet holiday season for us.
Great.
Thank you.
Hopefully, thank you, Mayor. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful Christmas and New Year's, and my family and I were home for the entire break, and we enjoyed our time at home. So hopefully everybody did the same. So we're going to move forward with the engineer's report. This is going to take a little while. We have a presentation by Gateway Engineers. Engineer Mitcherman is here to present.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. The manager's going to help guide us through this process, I believe.
Just, I mean, I don't have the remote, so just have to
Who's got that?
clear that and we'll be good,
This one?
probably.
Yeah, just click the top part.
So while that's happening, I'll talk a little bit about,
Bless you.
do you want the remotes?
It doesn't, oh, hey, I got it. Yeah, it doesn't reach over here, so you're gonna have to operate the remote. All right, which one do you want pulled up?
Overall map. So what we're going to show today is, we're going to talk about the sewer separation project. So first off, my name's Rick Minsterman, the borough engineer. Alberto Harquin is with us today. He is the project manager, and Grant Stahl, project engineer, who's assisted in a lot of the design work here. So first we want to talk today about sewer separation. So you've heard us talk about this over the last few months. There's lots of reasons for it. We're looking to increase the sewer line capacity, right? So in each of the sewer pipes, it can take some certain amount of flow. It's a fixed amount of flow. We're looking to increase the flow that it can take by taking flow out of it that doesn't have to be there. Obviously, then it'll result in some decreased flooding, decreased overflows and frequencies of those overflows. We'll begin to comply with the next consent order that Crafton will be signing in 2019, which is directly related to removal of stormwater flow, which is what the separation project is intended to do. Also, it'll improve on the operation and maintenance of the combined system itself, taking less wear and tear for having less flow in it. So once this comes up, we'll talk a little bit about what that means. First, I want to talk more about the criteria that we use to evaluate. Grant's going to pass out some of the mapping that we have here in case you can't see it or eventually we don't get it up. So there's two criteria that we use to select areas for the actual separation. So one is find areas that we minimize construction, the disturbance, the cost. We find cost-effective areas that are easy to do, easy to construct. And then the next is to find areas that have a close discharge to the environment, which means when we take this stormwater flow out of the combined system, we have to put it somewhere. So it has to be piped to a nearby stream or swale or some mechanism to get the removed flow out of the pipe and into a stream. Also want to talk a little bit about the limitations. So I just want to manage expectations of what these projects are. And you'll see there's certain areas, and Alberta's going to come up in a minute and go through those. But I want to talk a little bit about expectations. So I want to first say that these projects aren't going to solve the flooding problems for Crafton. They are certainly going to have an impact, but they're not going to solve all of our problems. It took 70 or 80 years to get here. It's not going to take 2 or 3 years to get out of it. But it's certainly going to make some big strides towards reducing flooding and minimizing. Also, I'll say that these projects, what's good about them is that they have impact to the upstream and downstream residents. So you'll see, as Alberto shows a project, there'll be a location of the project, a certain street or intersection, and what happens is then everybody downstream from that location will benefit because there's more room in the pipe, because flow has been removed. People upstream from the project will benefit, or can benefit, by having more flow go into those sewers. So what happens is at the locations that we're removing this flow, the sewers from the upstream locations can back up because the water can't get through this bottleneck. And the sewers below, now that we've removed that flow, the residents that are downstream of these projects, their systems have more room for flow to get into. So we see a benefit for both the upstream and downstream residents of these projects. Now, we're in the concept phase, which just means these are conceptual projects, ideas, and they've met the criteria. Easy construction, lower cost, and a place to discharge, an easy discharge location. But still need work in order to pursue these projects. There's field verification work that needs to be done, surveying. There's a stormwater management, which means the stormwater that we're taking out of the sanitary system and putting into the environment, that needs to be managed to make sure we don't create another problem by taking the water out of one system and putting it into another, and then having a problem with that second system. So stormwater management needs to be addressed. We need to do preliminary layouts and designs. These are conceptual layouts and design. There's permitting, there's utility conflicts that have to be resolved, there's easement acquisitions, even then the final design. So just want to make sure that folks understand that every project on here isn't a guaranteed project. There are or could be limitations to the projects that maybe they don't make them as attractive as the concept is. So lastly, what's the next steps? The next steps are, we have to go through some level of truthing these projects, making sure they can be constructed. They need to be prioritized, and then we need to do the design development that I just mentioned. We got to find capital funding to do this. Obviously, grants are a big part of this. And then finally, construction. So I just wanted to spend a minute or two explaining that in a bigger picture process, and then ask Alberto to come up and go through each of these projects that I've identified on this map, and by their, highlighting in the blue area. So we'll go through each one of those one at a time. So Alberto? And RJ, if we can somehow switch to the next map.
I think we're doing them in order, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The first area we studied, the Woodlawn Avenue. Woodlawn Avenue has 9 existing catch basins running down Woodlawn Avenue, which collect the stormwater runoff from South Grandview, South Linwood Avenue, Marion Street, Hawthorne, and Kingston Avenue. This blue line here is a contributing drainage area towards Woodlawn Avenue, which is approximately 30 acres. We chose this one site as one of the sites of study because you have the catch basins that are very close to each other, which would result in very little construction, very little infrastructure in order to be able to take all those catch basins, sorry, I missed that back a little bit. Right now, those catch basins tie into the combined system, so you have all the stormwater runoff that comes down the road, goes into those catch basins, and they actually flow into our combined system. So what we wanted to do was to go ahead and take those 9 catch basins that are all kind of running down Woodlawn Avenue and separate them, and the way we would do that is by putting in a storm line parallel with the existing line and reconnecting those catch basins, taking them away from the sewer and putting them into storm. Like I said, this was about 30 acres of runoff, and as you come down Woodlawn Avenue, we have Bell's Run, we have an open channel there where we can easily discharge the stormwater runoff. By doing this work here, we're doing very little infrastructure work, but we get a lot of gain by taking away 30 acres of runoff from the combined system. So this is one of the options that we looked at that was, it had very little infrastructure, and then we had a nice discharge point to just discharge the water and separate it from the sewer. So this was concept number 1 that we did.
Now, how will that change the runoff of the busway and flooding under the underpass?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the analysis of the stormwater through here, if you look at this point here, this is a 760 acre watershed that all comes down through Bell's Run. With our stormwater here, we'd have to further analyze it and see if we can hold back some of the smaller storms. But for the bigger storms, we want to let that water go out as fast as possible because we're trying to avoid the flood that's going to be coming down from the big watershed. So as we go through these, in some of these we have in our cost estimates different budgets for providing stormwater BMPs. Here it would make sense to go ahead and do a small, just hold back the smaller storms. For the bigger storms, we want that water just to go before the big storm comes through. So we will, as we go further and develop these concepts, we will look at stormwater and see what happens as a result of our separation. For all of these, we have numbers in there for providing some kind of stormwater facility, BMP, underground pipe, tank. So, but right now we're still at the conceptual phase. But yeah, all of these, for the most part, they all either kind of dump out into Bell's Run or Chartiers, and those were the ones that had the easiest separation because we had a point of discharge. So the second one is an extension of, this one is Crafton Boulevard.
Is this the right one?
Yeah, it's just rendering.
Yeah, the second one here is, it's Crafton Boulevard. Over the last few years, we have been working on Clearview Avenue and doing the separation there. We've gone ahead and provided tanks, new catch basin, new piping, and separated. We've done the 5 phases of Clearview, which that captured about 23 acres of runoff. But right now, that runoff ties back into our sewer or our combined system. By going ahead and adding some more storm lines and doing the same kind of method of the existing catch basins that are there now, taking them off of the combined system and putting them into just a designated storm, we're able to kind of collect more of the runoff on Starrett Street here and on Clearview, and then extend that system. Right now we have the existing system from Clearview. We would tie into that system, and all these green lines are new storm lines we'd be constructing. So we would take that line down Crafton Boulevard, keep coming down, and then just past the bridge, come down and dump into Bell's Run. So this would take from having 23 acres of capture, now you're up to about 30 acres. And again, this is another situation where we're just going to be going and taking the existing catch basins that are there now that are tied into the combined, redirecting them into a new storm line, and then bringing that down to an outfall area. Something like this, for this site here, we have to coordinate with PennDOT because we're working in the right of way, so it'd be a PennDOT highway occupancy permit. By crossing over here, we're into the city of Pittsburgh property or property boundaries, and that would be going through the city, getting permits with them. And then also here at the end of our discharge point is property that isn't owned by Crafton, so for that, we'd have to coordinate with the property owner and see if we'd have to get an easement by the property. So this one, it's a bigger project, it's a larger scale, and there are a lot of entities we got to coordinate and work with. It's also in the right of way here, you also have utilities that we got to kind of coordinate and investigate. But this one would take away 30 acres of runoff that potentially come down here, come down Dinsmore, keep coming through and all the way through. So now you're at the top of the hill, and we're taking away those 30 acres that potentially would make it their way all the way down towards Broadhead and down into the discharge point. So by doing that, we're taking this water away, discharging it out and providing more capacity for our system downstream of us.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Bell's Run, majority of it's in the city of Pittsburgh.
Correct.
It all starts out, from my familiarity with it, up by Noble Manor Shopping Center, okay? The water that catches in there in a normal storm right now is flooding the underpass at Morange and Chartiers. Adding more water to Bell's Run without something being done to Bell's Run first is gonna create a catastrophic flooding. If you're adding more water than what's going in there now, and Public Works is familiar with the flooding that goes on at the, we'll call it at the Canavan end of Morange Road, that floods when we get 3 or 4 inches of rain. If you're gonna add this water as well as the water from Woodlawn Avenue into that, that's just gonna make this situation worse, unless you do something with this area down here by Chartiers and Woodlawn to permit that water to flow under the busway down further where it comes out of Chartiers and Fountain, where it opens up again. You're gonna have to get a huge.
Yeah, we're gonna be, for these kind of projects here, for example, along Crafton Boulevard here, we would have, just like we did at Clearview, oversized tanks, we'd have stormwater control, and then demonstrate that we're not just gonna be dumping the water into the stream. It's gonna be managed, we're gonna hold it back and slow release it into the stream.
Yeah, there's a couple engineering concepts that came up, and your concern was echoed by Alcoasand. Mr. Provost was concerned about Bell's Run as well and the infrastructure, because they have some pretty heavy-duty infrastructure that serves their system down there, and it's being eroded, so they have a project that they have to undertake as well. One of the engineering concepts is obviously the storage and slow release of the water that we're capturing out of our system, and to moderate it or modulate it as it's going through the system. And the second is to design the system so this water is released from our system prior to any of the flow that is coming through the system above. So those are two of the main engineering concepts that they're putting into this concept. So I think we're in the early stages, and we do have to address this, because in order for us to get buy-in from Alcoasand, we need to address the Bell's Run issue.
Yeah, and as far as this one's at the top of the watershed, so here's where we want to hold back water. The other one was down towards the bottom of the watershed, so they want the water to go and get out of the way before the big storm comes, or before the big flood comes. So those are things we still got to look at and see where we are in the watershed, and either do we want to hold back the water and let the, kind of hold it back so the flood goes by and then we let it out, or do we want the water to go out first before the big flood comes? So those are the different things we got to still analyze for each one of these concepts. So.
The idea too that what contributes to meringue is not just Bell's Run, it's the combined system. The combined system actually overflows and helps flood that area too. So we'll be attacking it from both sides, holding back. Not only do we take this stormwater out of this combined system that does flood that area, that'll be pulled out, and then we'll be releasing it strategically so that it doesn't contribute to the flow in Bell's Run, in the stream itself.
That's, excuse me, that's the Crafton part. The city of Pittsburgh part, Oakwood, okay, that all flows down into Bell's Run too. Anywhere along Baldwin Road, city side, Bell's Run flows down behind there, under the Oakwood Bridge, down through behind,
And now Poplar,
Park.
they separated Poplar into that system as well.
But still, the city should be talked to as far as what's going into, what their overflow or stormwater is going into Bell's Run, because just what's going in there now is creating situations down at the lower end where that pipe goes under the busway. That's where the problem starts, right there, because the trees and the branches and everything washes down through Bell's Run and blocks that, overflows, and the volume of water also goes to overflow, and it just runs down and floods the underpass, and with lost vehicles, and people that don't turn around, but just recently, this year.
Yeah,
But I would
and to your-
think that-
and to your point too, there are areas, I was looking at the FEMA flood maps, and down at the area where the Saloni's,
Right,
that's all mapped as a 100-year floodplain, so that area is known to be 100, it does flood. But further upstream, some of that isn't, but that entire watershed you're talking about is about 760 acres. So it's a very large watershed.
right, so I'm saying that there should be a plan in place, you know, maybe get together with the city of Pittsburgh and Crafton or whatever municipalities, say, listen, when we put this in, what are you guys doing on the city side to mitigate these problems that we're having down there? You know,
Yep,
that's all.
that's part of it.
Alberto, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So since we separated out 23 gallons off the Clearview project, this would be kind of like the next kind of sequel to that in the sense that we'd be capturing the rest of the hill, correct?
Yeah, I mean, because right now, the Clearview 23 acres, we've taken it, we've separated it, but then it comes back into the sewer, so it's not truly a separation.
Right.
If we do this phase here, and we bring it all the way down to the stream, then you have a true separation of that entire hill.
So while we can't control necessarily some of the flooding that occurs in areas that are outside of our boundaries into the watersheds, to the mayor's point, if we held back this water here, it's possible that Bell's Run still might overflow through other means, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, we have 30 acres out of 760 acres, you know, so.
But this would then in turn relieve the pressure on the system inside of our borders, so this water.
The sanitary system.
Correct. This water potentially would not end up in someone's basement, correct? So, okay, thank you.
And also moving forward with the Crafton Boulevard project, the phase 5 of Clearview, we spent about $500K on that. And Alcoasand at their last meeting says that if we continue to embark on the Crafton Boulevard separation, they will be willing to pay up to 80% of Clearview phase 5 if we connect the system and we submit that paperwork in proper sequence, because they will be able to justify it as a complete separation project.
So the thing we already did, they would reimburse it.
Basically, we would be
Based on
getting
that.
credit, we'd be getting credit, $400,000 credit towards
Yes.
additional work.
The next site, number 3, is, this is a smaller site here in Emerson Street. Right now, there's an existing catch basin near the stairways that just connects right into the existing combination line that's there. So by just taking that catch basin, putting a new pipe, and again, discharging along Bell's Run. I mean, those are the ones that were kind of the easiest to choose, because
Understand.
we're able to, just by taking away this one catch basin, you can go ahead and pull away 1.5 acres of stormwater runoff. So this one right here is very little work, and you're able to remove 1.5 acres. And going on the field there, you can see that this manhole, there was like toilet paper coming out of the side of the hill, so you can tell that there is some flooding that happens here. So by taking that catch basin away, we might be able to at least fix this localized area, but it's also going to help further downstream. So
It's
this,
eroded the stairs there too, there are steps that are now getting continually eroded. So the point is kind of that a lot of that water is getting to Bell's Run anyway, but it's mixing with sewage. So this way, if we get the clean stormwater out, manage it, and then send it to Bell's Run.
yeah, and this one here is all, Borough roads within borough limits. So this one here, you don't have to go through any kind of city coordination, any kind of difficult permits. It would just be getting your permit for your stream discharge and building the infrastructure.
And you said this was one catch basin?
Yeah, just one existing catch basin that's there now.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
This next idea that we looked at was, you have Perrine Street and you have Bar Avenue here. There's 2 catch basins right now at a low point here on the intersection of Perrine and Bar that are there right now and are connected to the combined system. There are also 2 other ones over here that are connected to the combined system. By rerouting those 4 catch basins, putting a new line, and then just discharging just south, we're able to take away 3.5 acres of runoff. Again, very little infrastructure, catch basins are close to each other. The issue with this one is that we are dumping onto the neighboring property here that is not owned by the borough and is not in borough limits, it is the city of Pittsburgh. So for this one here, you would have to, coordinate with the city to get their land operations permit for that discharge, but also acquire an easement from this neighboring property here in order to be able to do just a very little work there to put the discharge. We walk that area, there is a defined channel there that eventually comes down towards Baldwick and then contributes into Bell's Run. This is almost kind of like the starting point of Bell's Run within the borough area, so. Same thing with this one here, our plans was for this pipe here, just to be an oversized pipe. We're not just gonna let the water go, we're gonna try to manage, even if we can manage the smaller storms, a 1-inch storm, a 2-inch storm, that's gonna do, those are the storms that happen 90% of the time around here. But we'll obviously analyze from the small storm all the way up to 100-year storm and see what the impacts are for every one of these, whichever one is chosen. The next site is site number 5.
What did I just do? Sorry, man. That's my bad.
Your Christmas
Yeah.
pictures are up next.
Sorry, guys.
You got it, yeah.
This next site here is kind of up just north of, of Clearview Avenue along Bar Avenue. At the intersection of Harris and Bar, there's an existing catch basin that's here right now that's connected into the system. By adding another catch basin on the other side of the intersection and connecting it into this infrastructure here was done as part of the Clearview project, so this is already all separated. But just extending that and connected into here, we're able to pull this much of Bar Avenue, which is about that's about 3 acres of runoff. There's another catch basin here that we're gonna look at, but that will be able to add even another acre of runoff. So potentially by adding just a few structures and a little bit of pipe, we can pull away 4 acres of stormwater runoff from the combined system. So this is another one where there's very little work, but we're getting a pretty good return on the amount of stormwater that we remove from the system. The next one we have is South Grandview Avenue. There are about 6 catch basins located down along South Grandview Avenue before you hit Ewing Road, and they capture approximately 15 acres of runoff. Here, same kind of idea, where we're going to take away the catch basins from the combined system and put them into a new system. We're thinking that we probably have a nice oversized pipe right here. And then there's already a discharge point off of Ewing Road here that goes down towards Chartiers. So we probably just try to use that existing channel that's there, defined channel, probably armor with some extra riprap just to make sure it's not going to cause any erosion. But here, just by doing this little work, you're able to pull away like 15 acres of stormwater from the sewer system.
That goes to Chartiers.
Yeah, it's right down here, so it just comes right through and out, so. Site number 7 that we looked at was Fountain Street. There are currently like 4 catch basins through here with some storm pipe that's already kind of separated, but then eventually comes back in the combined system. So what we wanted to do was extend that storm line for a little bit further down, add a couple catch basins, and then bring that down here, bring it through, and collect some more catch basins, bring it down, and then eventually dump it out at Bell's Run. But here, with adding some of this storm pipe in here, we're able to collect approximately 10 acres of runoff. This one requires a little bit more of infrastructure, a little more piping than some of the other ones. But again, we chose this one because we had Bell's Run at our advantage here, and we had some catch basins, that were kind of clustered at intersections, so we can try to had a little bit more infrastructure work, but it still kind of gave us a pretty good return with 10 acres of stormwater separation. Now, these next 2 sites that we have are the final 2. This first one here, we're calling it Broadhead Avenue. We looked at this one just because, you know, this is fun, this is the ultimate kind of discharge point of the combined system here. So we looked and saw how much can we try to capture without doing too much infrastructure work. We went ahead and, you know, worked our way upstream here, and we're able to collect Warren Street, Park Avenue, and Culture Street. It's about 30 acres. 30 acres of runoff in a kind of urbanized, pretty dense area. This concept does require a lot of infrastructure work, as you can see. You know, we got to bring a pretty big storm line up the middle here, just because along Broadhead, just because this phase here has to be kind of master planned for the next phase that I'll talk about next. If we want to try to take away some of the stuff from the busway, we got to build this system here first in order to allow for the next system to be tied into it. We have storm lines coming up, the three roads that I just mentioned, intercepting the catch basins, and here we're capturing 30 acres of runoff, stormwater runoff. We're kind of just taking it away from the system and dumping it into towards Chartiers Creek. The last one that we have is the west busway separation, and this one is going to be a continuation of the last one. Here's where we finish the Broadhead one, and then we just continue that through the busway, collecting the catch basins that are there now that are tied in the combined system, putting them into the storm system, and then kind of bringing them through. So if we go ahead and do that second phase and the one before, you're taking away 60 acres of runoff from the combined system and bringing it out and just dumping it out towards the creek. In total, we have...
Which creek is it?
Chartiers, yeah. In total, we have, you know, the borough acreage is about 730 acres. And by doing, if you were to do all 9 projects, we take away 162 acres, which is about 22% of the borough's area, and take it away from the combined system and then dump it into some of the drainage ways that are there.
You said that would be, probably all 8 of these would be 22% of the borough's floodable area?
Yeah, total, yeah, there's 9 of them, there's 8A and 8B, so there's 9 projects.
Okay.
22% flow.
Flow, I'm sorry.
22% of the drainage area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just area-wise, I'm just, we'll be able to separate
Do we-
162 acres.
So do we have a
Yeah.
water, you're getting into the
Yeah,
water
the
model, on how many gallons
Yeah,
total?
we'll go to the next,
Might not
So wait a
be in
minute.
order.
We're gonna have to,
Okay, what's the next
maybe
row?
go to the, keep going down. Oh, is it all the way at the top?
Oh,
Because it's dated, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so if we look at the 9 projects that we have here, estimated stormwater flow removal, if you add all 9 projects, you're looking at about 88,953,388 gallons will be removed on a yearly basis from our combined system. And then, one of the things we did is we did come up with cost estimates for all these projects, how much it was going to be, it would cost to, you know, install the catch base, install manholes, install the stormwater BMPs, install piping, and also to do the restoration on the works, on the roads that we're doing the work on, and that would be the trench repair, or in some cases, paving half a lane, or paving the entire road. So we went ahead and came up with some cost estimates for each one of these phases, and then what we did is, you know, one of the big things is cost per gallon removed. So if you look at these projects here, for example, the first one, Woolon Avenue, it costs you $655,000. You're removing 15,000 gallons, and so the cost per gallon removed is 4 cents. You go to the next one, Crafton Boulevard, $2 million project. You removing 18,000. That one's 11 cents per gallon. I'm sorry, 18 million. I'm sorry. You're looking at 11 cents per gallon. Emerson Street, $75,000 about to build this project. You're moving $1,154,000. That's 6 cents per gallon. So we went ahead and did that for all 9 projects. You know, like I was saying before, South Grandview Avenue, that one had very little infrastructure, but it had a big drainage area. So that one, you're looking at 3 cents per gallon. And then as far as the project acreage, each one of these kind of showed you, like I mentioned before, how much area we're going to be removing from the system. And then at the end here, it's how much percent of the borough's area is that. Do you want to talk about this?
We did attach those last sets of maps, we don't have them for the board, but
I think, oh.
the areas, yeah, those areas, it just, a question came up at the engineering meeting, which was, hey, how much area, or how many residents are each of these projects impacting? So you can look at the project numbers, and then you can see that red area is the impact area of each of those projects. So you could attribute, you know, each site to that many residents. As I mentioned, there's impact to upstream residents and impact to downstream residents. So that's what those maps are, just to answer that question.
The smaller maps in this
The
particular
last
case.
board,
So you're
yeah.
talking about, in this instance, this red line would impact off of where the site is, that red line would be
Yeah.
residents impacted
Yep.
in all directions.
Yeah, because you have, the green is the sewer, the gravity combination system, so by fixing up the bottleneck here, you're gonna help have more capacity for your upstream neighbors. And then downstream neighbors, same thing, because you're gonna be taking away some of the flow, so there'll be more capacity.
Quickly, if I may interject, do you guys know which of these are preferred projects from Alcoasand, or which ones are in the pipeline for funding?
We haven't heard, we're, pretty soon, I believe, in the next couple of weeks, Alcoasand's going to release the list of projects that they're exempting from the letter of interest, which is just the first step of submitting a project. So we showed them all the projects, and then we talked about a couple of projects, so we'll wait to hear back from them on which projects they like best. And that probably, or most likely, would lead us to the next projects that we'd pursue, especially if they provided up to 80% of a grant, then it might make sense to approach those first. So we should hear in the next couple of weeks which projects those are.
Yeah. When we had our meeting with Alcoasand, really all the separation projects are high priorities. I mean, they're looking for communities to bring separation projects to the front. And with that as our backdrop, with the DEP and EPA consent orders, they're very motivated to deploy their capital to minimize the overflows with their points of compliance, of which the Borough of Crafton has a few that are very out of compliance. So anything that we do as a municipality to willingly minimize our days out of compliance is what's going to help them. So I'm very bullish on this. I believe the engineers are as well. And now we just need to work on what concepts really play out well economically. You know, I wouldn't get too scared off with the numbers, you know, comparing a 4-cent project versus 11-cent project. Really, you have to look at the median of what it's costing the Borough of Crafton to remove gallons out of the system. And I think by far our infrastructure projects are very, very competitive. So I think we have a very good chance here. What Alcoasand wants to hear from council is that we're not going to be gun shy when it comes time for us to take a loan to fund the parts of the projects that they're not funding, or to spend the funds out of our sewer fund. And they don't want to hear, well, this is how much we have in our sewer fund today. They want to hear that we're willing to budget the capital and the debt service to address these issues. They're not interested in a 20-year schedule to get things done. They have a EPA consent order coming down on them that's been bearing down on them to bring the region into compliance. So therefore, really, they're going to be working with councils in their communities that want to make a good faith effort to get the work done. And as council,
Just as a comparison, when you mentioned the 3 to 11 cents per gallon removed, I know Alcoasand is using 40 cents as their minimum to get the highest rate of 80% reimbursement. So these projects are far superior to even their minimum standard.
So then, best case scenario, looking at the numbers you have here, if over the course of a relatively short number of cycles, they accept these, they could be funding as much as 5.6 million of this.
yes.
Yeah, and some of these will take us longer to get to the point where we're ready, the
Right,
ones
then
that
we're
have.
gonna be going through a few cycles
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
so we're not talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't be March, some of these will be a couple of years.
Right,
Yeah, so we need to have literally projects in the pipeline that are shovel ready. What I communicated to Alcoasand on behalf of council was that we're committed to making the investments. The manager was there, she understood that, we all, shook our heads in agreement that, we're committed to making the improvements for the greater good. But, that we also wanna have projects ready for the next council to step up to the plate and continue funding. So one of the projects that we have, that was on the table, that we tried for a grant that was not successful, was a reconstruction for the Johnson Street sewer. So, we said, let's get that project moving forward. The engineers had that, all slated, with the economics and the drawings, and so we're going to be moving forward with that with council's approval. So the manager and the engineer have been instructed to bring that to the table and get that project done. The money does nobody any good if it's sitting in an account. We have to deploy the capital in the community. So, Mr. Mayor, your neighborhood with your very interesting sewer system is gonna be corrected. So let's fix the parking and your sewers and move things forward.
There was also a project that was granted through Borough just recently, so we're working on that right now. So it's similar projects, it's a storm sewer separation project that was quick and easy to get in for an application, and it was approved for funding.
So with your support, council, our planning for 2018 is gonna roll into 2019 and lay the foundations for, hopefully in 2020 to have some of these projects go on the ground and for us to, explore with the manager, the funding avenues that we take. If it's just cash on the barrelhead or if it's a debt service to do what we need to do, we're gonna work with the engineer and Alcoasand and the manager to fulfill our obligations to the community.
Something that just worries me a little bit is that this thing with the city and Bell's Run. I think you said there was 152 acres that will be sort of affected by this.
Yeah, 162 acres, which we.
162. I just did a real quick calculation here, and 100 of those acres are going into that Bell Run.
Yeah, like I said before, we're not just gonna dump it straight into the creek.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead, hold it, manage it, let it out, and where it makes sense just to let it out fast before the storm, we'll do that, but in areas where we wanna hold it back, we'll evaluate that. That's something that has to be done as part of the next phase, design development.
A lot of communication with the city there.
Yeah.
Remember too that, would you say 100 acres out of 760 acres, so it's only 15%. That's another positive, that we're not impacting, or we're not taking 50% of the water and the drainage from that area. So luckily, it's a smaller percentage, and there are techniques, there are applications for holding or releasing water quicker or holding the water longer to fit the best scenario. So there are engineering techniques to address those, and certainly working with more so the DEP and the Conservation District, who really do manage the stormwater to the storms. They're the watchdogs for the flooding of streams and discharging volumes. So they'll be making sure that Crafton has stormwater control and stormwater management tactics on these. They're not going to allow them to just be dumped into a stream that already has flooding problems.
Okay.
And we need to vocalize our displeasure with adjacent communities, maybe taking the shorter economic route, and that is, doing direct discharge, and hopefully, we'll check in on Green Tree to make sure when they did their poplar separation project that they built in some storage, because when they separate all the way up Poplar to I believe 376 that they did, and they separated people's downspouts and the gutter line. So that was quite a bit of water, and it's fine to separate it, but you have to build in the retention. In all of our projects, we've been using a lot of green infrastructure and techniques to hold back the water or do infiltration into the soils versus doing direct discharge in an uncontrolled fashion. So we'll continue to work diligently on that.
But just to be clear though, these projects would either, I mean, I don't want to make it a zero sum, it's either, you know, obviously we're not dumping water into the creek or into the streams, I understand that, but even managing that water and the flow to their natural drainage points, it comes down to the people inside these red lines are gonna be impacted by that management of that water, so, in some instances, it's a question, you know, do we put them in a tank under the ground, or do we put them in their houses, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
You also have to realize too that a lot of these flows are overflowing out of the system and going into Bell's Run anyway,
Right.
completely uncontrolled.
Correct.
Yeah.
So by mitigating those overflows and holding that stormwater back, we're at least discharging clean water to Bell's Run and managed clean water. So there's many benefits to the process that we probably won't even see, or we probably can't calculate. We'll see them when they're done, but something like that, you know, how many gallons are overflowing out of?
How about being in
out of a
compliance
well?
with the US Clean Water Act? I mean, come
Something
on,
that you're
US
not
EPA
right
Clean
now,
Water
right.
Act is what we're under, and that's what we need to be achieving. And by the way, we're about 40 years past due on this. It's not like the Clean Water Act was passed yesterday, it was passed in the 70s. So, let's get rid of it.
Okay, no more questions, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, guys. All right, we can move forward with the solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. One listed item and two non-listed items. I left at everybody's place the final version of the registration ordinance. It should have been in your packets or available on the shared drive. It is 99% identical to what you reviewed in the past with two changes. One, the registration deadline this year I pushed it back to August 31st to make sure we had enough time. And added just some non-material language in section 95-3C. Also wanted to remind council that in preparing for rolling this out to the business properties this year, you'll need to consider amending your fee resolution so there are appropriate fees associated with the registration process. And I know we didn't address it at the end of the year because that was something that was going to happen later this year. So this is on the agenda later to authorize advertisement for consideration at your next council meeting on the 28th. So if anybody has questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, you can always reach out to me before we advertise. We'll probably send it to the paper on Wednesday or Thursday this week.
Okay.
All right, second, I just wanted to mention that there will be a brief executive session following the meeting to receive the advice of solicitor on a contract matter. And then lastly, Mr. Lavasser asked me to draft the motion with respect to Johnson Street. So I'll read a motion, and if someone would make it, that would be great. That's a motion to authorize the police and/or borough engineer to study the conversion of Johnson Street to parking on only one side of the street.
I'm chairing the meeting, so.
I know you can't.
Oh, you want them, I thought you
If
were
I'm not making,
No, I thought you were finishing
So
the report
moved.
first.
no.
May I hear a second?
Yes,
Second.
Any discussion?
Do we know, I had just in, I'm sorry,
Which side of the street?
that's exactly.
Well, I've
Part of this study.
That's part of the study.
I know.
The mayor may have an idea, but the study would probably look at
Oh, I
both
see,
and
okay.
would establish if there is a need for emergency vehicles, et cetera, and the council can decide how to proceed.
I was actually just curious about if the mayor had any thoughts ahead of time before the study was done.
Sure.
If he'd be so kind to.
Yeah, my thought would be the, let's call it the west side of Johnson Street to be the no parking side,
in
which
relation-
would be the side towards North Emily. so the fire trucks, when they make a turn off of Crafton Boulevard, have a full swing at the street, and are able to use the left curb to roll down.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments?
Public comment.
Public comment?
It was not on the agenda. Okay.
All right. Hearing the public comment. All in favor?
Aye.
All that oppose? Passes unanimously.
That's the end of my report.
All righty. Moving forward with the business agenda.
Manager's report.
Oh, sorry. You have your little ballpoint there. Okay. All right, there you go. Manager Susko.
All right, I know I promised that last time would be one of the longer reports. I regret to inform you that I have 12 items on this one, so sit tight with me. We'll try and move through it quickly, but I guess that's good news because that means that we've been up to a lot in the last month, right? So just the first part of the report is a general review of, if there are anything, any agenda items, motions, whatnot later that might need any further explanation. So just the one that I wanted to highlight from this agenda is there's a motion to appoint Susan Chechanowski as the code enforcement officer. Her current title is assistant code enforcement officer, which was, we were kind of using it as a sort of trial run for increased code enforcement activity. So that's been very successful. I've enjoyed working with her. I think that she's doing a really great job. So the 2019 budget and the wage resolution that we passed at the end of last year was structured to have room for additional assistant code enforcement officers, if necessary, to be brought on, and to split off code enforcement officer hourly position and assistant code enforcement officers hourly, still a part-time position. So this is kind of just the formality to promote her to the main code enforcement officer. The rest of my report is pretty much just concerning different things that we've been up to in the administrative office, updates on different projects, letting you know kind of what we're going to be focusing on as we move on to the new year. So the first thing that I wanted to call out was streetscape information. So this is something that I've kind of been vaguely, mentioning as we've been gearing up for this whole community economic redevelopment, revitalization effort since I've been here. So just this is the first stages. We're working with our engineers to develop sort of some conceptual streetscape designs for the downtown business core area. So we've just sent them the work authorization to get started on that. Now that's kind of just the drawings right now. We're not getting into the hard side of engineering, but more just what could this look like down here if we were to really commit to streetscaping. So that can include features such as decorative light poles, lamp posts, banners. When you go through communities and you see that it says, for example, Carnegie, and they have their sort of coat of arms. Those kinds of things that let people know, we're in Crafton, and maybe you see down the street, the banners keep going, oh, what's down there? I want to explore. Another feature of streetscapes can be decorative crosswalks that are easier for drivers to see, tend to make them slow down a little bit, just, those natural speed controls, so it's safer for pedestrians. ADA ramps could be included in that, planters along the tree line for, any sort of greenery, benches, etc., in addition to just sort of the basic repair of the sidewalks, kind of getting a little bit of curb appeal going. So that's sort of the very, basic scope of things that can be included in a streetscape. We're going to be having them working on sort of those concept drawings so we can evaluate the different design features and ideas, looking towards eventually pursuing grant funding and developing full cost so we can get some engineering, design, and then construction money. There are all kinds of grants you can go for that. The ones I'm most familiar with are DCED, but we have some good partners in our regional offices for the state where it's pretty much, bring them a project, and if you've got a vision, they're happy to help you find the funding. So, now that it's 2019, we're gonna really be launching that effort. Switching gears to something in the public works and a street sweeper. I believe our street sweeper, Rob, if you could tell us how many years it's been in service now?
20. I think it was purchased in 2002.
Yeah, so it's seen better days perhaps. So we budgeted in the sewer fund to go ahead and do a purchase of a new one. We received a quote from a CoStar's vendor, which is A&H Equipment. We've bought other heavy equipment from them before. So at this point, it's kind of just working on getting financing quotes, probably from PMC. We've been offered some information by A&H in general, but, you know, we want to compare the rates and see if we can get a better one. So that's assuming a 5-year payment term. It should come in pretty much right at what was budgeted in the line item, which is $55,000 per year. So once I actually have, you know, full financing proposals, I can bring those to council, and then hopefully at the next meeting, if we get the okay, we can go ahead and move on the equipment purchase. We're working with the vendor to do a trade-in on our old street sweeper, which is preferable to trying to bid out the parts, because then you have to pay to advertise it and you don't really know how much you get. Whereas we could get a nice discount on our invoice for turning it over. So that should hopefully be on our next meeting. Update on turnkey taxes in the rental registry. So this is kind of related to the fire inspection ordinance that we're going to be advertising for consideration at, I believe, is the next meeting, right? Yeah. So I met with Mark Schuster shortly after the new year for training on the turnkey database system, reviewed the ways that Crafton could, you know, kind of use it to track things in addition to just the regular taxes. So invoices on, for example, if we have to do work on public, you know, health hazard nuisances, and then bill an individual for that work, you can enter that into the system. But the main point related to the rental registry here is that most of the groundwork for that was actually completed over the summer, with Mark working with the interns to collect the data for what properties were rentals, tying those properties back to the landlord, so that there's a way we can kind of centrally track, you know, what rental properties are owned by who and whether we're regularly inspecting them. So he showed me that he is very willing to work with us anytime there's a way that we could kind of improve the system to make it better serve our needs. So he, out of that meeting, he added like an option where you can put in, okay, we had contact with this person, they're due for a rental reinspection 2 years from this date. So that way you can go through the system and sort it so it brings up, you know, maybe all the rental inspections that will be due in October 2020, and that way the building inspector can kind of just, you know, boom, 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 boom. So it's a really nice way to tie it to the property, which is kind of what you're trying to do with all the invoices and taxes and whatnot with the system, and he was more than happy to add that. So, you know, we're gonna be continuing to looking for ways to improve it, make it work a little more for us, but it's pretty much ready to go, you know, whenever we get the ordinance in place and figure out how we're gonna go about enforcing it. Sustainable Pennsylvania certification update, I've mentioned this a couple times. This is something that state grants like to look at, that are, you know, it helps us qualify for things like the banner community application, which we're going to be putting in at the end of the month. So one of the big things that I wanted to get done before the end of the year was just completing our assessment, which is I think 150, 180, give or take, questions, you know, yes or no questions. Are you doing this, this, and that sort of, you know, best practice to make sure your organization is sustainable, whether it's environmental or financial planning, all kinds of things like that. So we did get that submitted for the end of the review, or the end of the year. Probably expecting the final review to be done in April. They actually would like to use our application as a training for people coming in all through the state to sort of just review them and how they score them. But if we get all of the points that we expect to get, we should achieve a gold level certification, which is the second certification level. Now that requires, first of all, answering yes, you know, being able to confirm that you've done several different sustainable practices that get you points, but also 70% of those have to be documented with a link to your website or some sort of document online. So that's the really time-consuming part, and one of Catherine's first duties as planning clerk officially was to do all the background work and research and linking for that whole assessment. So she did most of the work on that before my final review, so, you know, just wanted to give her kind of the props that she did a really good job on that. I was very pleased, so I'll let you know as soon as we hear for sure. But, you know, I would imagine that we at least get silver, but we may end up with that gold certification because we just kind of made it over with some of the different things we've been doing in the last year. Got some things to bump us over if that's all confirmed. So probably first or second meeting in February, I'll have a confirmation as to whether we officially got that. Halfway through, we're getting there. wanted to mention that on January 9th, last Wednesday, I attended the next Connect Transit-Oriented Development Workshop. This is something that the borough was involved in before I was here, but I'm just kind of continuing the conversation with developers, with the planning and design firm that Connect is working with, to kind of give advice to different municipalities that are located near sort of the main transit stops in the Pittsburgh region. So some of the different things they talked about were transit-oriented development techniques, Main Street redevelopment, funding opportunities, ways to rezone so that it's a little more keeping the character of the district is more of the focus instead of, here's use 1 through 10, and here are these very specific things you have to do for each use, kind of more about the historical preservation. So we talked about a lot of different things like that. I thought the meeting was really productive and tied in really well with kind of our first steps that we've been taking for our Main Street style community and economic development effort that we're getting going. A couple key takeaways. Like I said earlier, it's important to start with a vision to help attract redevelopment the right way. And so the first kind of step for that is getting those conceptual designs for a streetscape so we can show where we'd really like to be going. We're going in the right direction with discussing revising our zoning ordinance, getting a study put together by a firm, pursuing grant funding for that. For the really big projects, it's good to reach out to those stakeholder agencies early on because either they might be able to help you acquire the necessary grant funding or provide some sort of financial support connection, and also they'll be less likely to hold up a plan where they've actually been involved in the process rather than you coming to them with this wonderful thing all put together at the very end and you think you know what they're going to say and you're wrong and you've got to start all over. So it's better to just have those conversations in the beginning. Like for example, the Port Authority, we're located right beside this rapid bus transit stop, and thankfully, a representative from the Port Authority was there, so it was an opportunity to get the conversation started. A couple different planning firms, things like that. So yeah, very productive meeting. Continue to be involved in that. Next item on here, GIS data update. This is something that I was discussing last year, which was just a month ago, but last year with the engineers, kind of was given the directive that we would like to inventory what information is available in GIS-friendly formatting already, and how we could integrate that with Crafton's individual sort of ecosystem for that software, our individual GIS account. So last week I got a breakdown from their GIS specialist, what data is already available and has been loaded into our GIS account. So that's kind of like some of the sewer operational stuff, the maintenance, that's already available. What isn't available and how it can be collected or whether it can be collected, some different things are things that we just don't track or have access to because utilities protect certain data for security reasons, but for example, pedestrian facilities, sidewalks, condition, public stairs, ADA ramps, those are all things that aren't necessarily frequently tracked, but can be. So we've been working on discussing maybe opportunities to use interns to collect data. Like that's something that I've been seeing come through the local government academy and similar programs over the last couple of years is sending interns out with iPads, on GIS to go, okay, there are stairs here, this sidewalk piece isn't good for fair condition and whatnot.
I can help you with that as well. I have lots of time during the day to kill.
Yeah, I understand that you were working with the interns this summer to do kind of a sort of walkabout as well. So that's a really good opportunity to save on costs because interns are a little more affordable.
I'll stay in the public sphere, I promise.
Yeah, the engineers, no offense, they're a little cheaper. And also it's just a really good learning opportunity for them, which is something that definitely, programs look at when they're considering you for inter-program grant funding. So we'll be continuing to provide updates on that, but it seems like we're being pretty proactive on that and moving along well. Just wanted to highlight, while we're all here, waste management recycling information. We have been getting some calls about this in the last couple of weeks, so I figured I should address it. One of the things that we've been hearing a lot of questions about glass. I understand that a lot of municipalities in the overall region have no longer been accepting glass. As of now, this year, our contract is still taking glass recyclables. It's kind of that may change, after this year, and it's really more of a problem as to Whether the haulers, the waste haulers can find somebody to market the recyclables to. A lot of the facilities that used to be accepting glass, either they were overseas and they're no longer taking them, or just the economic situation has changed. So it's really not something that necessarily we have that much control over as a market as a whole. Our waste management contract, the first chunk of it ends after this year, but we have the option to extend each year for the next 5 years. So that's something to consider, but it certainly isn't just waste management as a hauler that's having this issue with glass. Now, the one thing that has changed is I'm aware that some residents have still been using those blue plastic bags to put recyclables in. Those are not being accepted anymore. They're technically not recyclable the same way that all of your other plastics are. They usually say, take to a drop-off facility or something like that. So waste management, among all our other haulers, has kind of moved to considering those contaminants in your regular single-stream recycling. So if you have been putting them out in blue bags, they may not have picked them up.
Just to clarify, the very same bags that most people receive at grocery store and the ones that are marketed as recyclable in most home supply stores?
Probably, yes. I mean, they're the ones with handles, you know what I mean?
So
And
they are not recyclable?
they are, well,
You should empty them into your container and then dispose of them.
yeah, they are
Just making sure we're all the same.
theoretically a recyclable material, just not in the traditional commercial single stream. I think some, big box stores let you take the bags back, to recycle. So I encourage you to continue having a bag full of bags in your house that you maybe remember to take back to the store one of these times. But if they see those bags, they're not gonna pick them up anymore. So just make sure to use a solid bin.
So what are the options for our residents who come home to find their recyclables on the streets, take it back next week?
Yeah, so typically, I know that we had a little bit of trouble over the holidays, and I think that just the people that normally run a route, either we had some temps or just people that weren't used to our route, so, vacation time and things like that. And I imagine that waste management and other haulers are dealing with a lot of, change going on, since a lot of the places aren't taking glass anymore. So, bear with us here. We've been working on getting everything resolved from the last couple weeks, and it's certainly not normal. Feel free to give us a call at the office if your pickup is missed. Typically, it's not so many at the same time, that there's quite as much of a load to still come back and get. But we can reach out to our route supervisor at Waste Management, let them know that an address was missed. They can try and send a truck out the next day. So I would say if you do contact us and we pass that information along, sit tight for another day. If it's still not picked up, feel free to let us know. Contact Waste Management directly. We can at least let them know about missed pickups individually, but any sort of billing issues or things like that are still things that an individual customer needs to deal with.
And the name, interrupt.
Of course.
So just so everybody knows, there are some changes with South Hills area COG. All right, some of your neighbors, friends that live in those communities had changes because their contract changed. Our contract did not change. We're not part of SHACOG, and we did not go through Charlotte West COG, which is our council of government. So we have our own contract for the Borough of Crafton. All right, so you need to look at our guidelines and work with our administration to make sure that your needs under our contract are being taken care of. So, again, your friend at church or at school or at work may say, well, I live in Bethel Park and they don't take glass anymore. That's not our contract, that's their deal. And then the question is, well, why aren't they taking glass? All right, so from a pure economic standpoint, the market for recyclable items has greatly changed due to the macroeconomics in the recycling market, mainly that the biggest buyer of recyclable material, being China, has declined their consumption of our recycled goods. So that means there's no market for the stuff. Plastics, glass. So those marketers are going to have to find other markets for this material. And obviously, this is something that the Borough of Crafton can't deal with on its own. The EPA, other entities are looking at it because going back to, well, I'm not unhappy with waste management. I'm sorry you're unhappy with waste management, but the reality is waste is a monopoly. There's only a few waste haulers and landfills, and to get the permit to have a new landfill is very, very difficult. And therefore, you have to sort of deal with the devil you know at this point, and that is our devil is waste management. And by the way, they are one of the largest, or the largest, landfill company in the United States of America. So we'll have to deal with it, but we are 1 square mile, and so, yeah, you may be upset, you wanna take pitchforks, but guess what? We're on a long list with everybody else that is unhappy with the recycling markets and how trash disposal goes. But my word to everybody is try to reduce, minimize, and reuse as much as you can, all right? It starts here at home, all right? Try to minimize what you're consuming, try to, to do that as best as you can. And beyond that, you feel guilty about throwing some things out. Next year's contract, when's our contract due?
So we have to let Waste Management know by October 31st if we want to extend.
Yeah. So, and then the rules may change, but we do have a great chemical recycling program. I really want to emphasize that. People are also having issues with electronic recycling. Again, we have avenues for you to properly dispose of your TVs. Please don't put your TV on the curb. If you got a great, deal on a 55-inch TV over Christmas, don't put it out on the curb so Bob has to figure out how to deal with it, because council's yelling at him and saying, listen, there's a 33-inch, Sony Vega out on the curb. So again, I just want to put that out there. Call the office. RJ can direct you to the right resources, and she'll take care of you. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
Of course, I was talking for too long anyway. Almost done, just a couple short ones at the end. I just wanted to give an update on, we referenced earlier that we talked about personnel in December. Part of that discussion was we brought in an intern, just kind of briefly over holiday break, Jess Okoski. She also, I believe, worked as one of the pool managers over the summer, or was involved in helping run the pool. She did a really great job. We brought her in to kind of clean out those code enforcement inspection old files. We've got about, I want to say 4 or 5 of these lateral files that are about as tall as me and this long, stuffed to the brim. And of course, now that we've been more active in our building inspection and code enforcement, we need some more room to store things. And there are several requirements that municipalities have for all the documents that are required to keep, for the life of the building existing, or when you can dispose of code enforcement issues that are clearly closed, versus ones that may be ongoing, repeat offenders, things like that. So our options were to look at buying another one of these lateral filers, which clock in at about $700, and then find somewhere to put it, which we really don't have at the moment anyway, or bring Jess in so that she could pull all of the duplicate files, all of the stuff that was so aged out that it was completely irrelevant, any of the as-built, big map drawings for plot plans and things like that, so that she could archive those, because the maps are things that we're required to keep. So we could archive those elsewhere and really just keep those lateral filers for the current code enforcement building inspection files. She made a whole lot of room, got rid of a couple boxes worth of duplicates, and overall just did a great job very efficiently. So thankfully we can hold off on that filing cabinet at least for probably another year or two. So I just want to give an update she finished last Friday, I believe. So it was somewhere around 30-40 hours, and she knocked the whole set of filing cabinets out. Yeah, so she did a great job, very helpful. Wanted to give a quick, just real brief update on the Greenlight Go grants that we received last year. The grant documents were all executed on our end towards late fall. And so they're just waiting for sort of the final sign off at the state level. It's pretty much the whole batch of everyone that submitted this year, so it's not just us. Once that's complete, our engineers can begin working on bid documents, moving the project forward. Just as a reminder, there were 4 signals that were included for approximately $700,000 of grant funds. These projects will require the council to approve the work authorizations if we just do them all at one time, because they're going to be in excess of $5,000 for each project for engineering fees, and that's pretty much the bulk of our
grant match, and this is all budgeted in the 2019 road fund. We probably won't incur most of the construction costs this year, but we just sort of did in and out, you know, for grant fund reimbursement line items, so there's a placeholder. Anything that we don't spend this year will be carried over into 2020, or, you know, hopefully not necessarily beyond, but, so that's there. As soon as, you know, we get more information, I'll bring the work authorizations here and we can get them going. Last item, just wanted to make a brief note about board and commission vacancies in the new year. So there are some expired terms that the council will need to fill on the zoning hearing board, civil service commission, rec board, and building appeals board. So I'm just kind of requesting, you know, group consensus that we're good to let people know that we're accepting letters, declarations of interest for either new members or reappointments to the spot on the board. You know, we can put the information about what terms are available, when they expired, when they go to, for what people are applying for, you know, online, local paper, something like that. So as long as we're all good and comfortable with that, you know, I'll go ahead and get that done. Maybe we'll take letters until, if we have to, the first meeting in February. I would suggest maybe we try and have them do, you know, the next meeting, because there are a couple spots on each of these that we definitely want to get filled to keep everything moving along. So
If you can, give me directions on how the rec board has to operate. Is it still, you still need a representative from the CIT to the football?
They're all at large now.
And if we're getting a grant, you don't have to have that information from the Cougars or the football fields anymore.
A grant
It used to
for,
be, if you're applying for a grant, you needed to have all these organizations.
To a borough grant. So in order for us,
Yeah.
the grant funds to them, they would have to have representation on the rec board.
Yeah.
Well,
oh, okay.
that's something that we can explore, and actually that's a good segue later into the business agenda. We have an appointment, and I'll talk more about that appointment when we get there.
Well, I would like to take, you know, maybe hold that off till we see, because most of these, you know, have, I don't know if you're, Sharon Gatens is maybe a swim team, but other than that, I don't think any of the organizations are represented on that board anymore.
Okay, well, this is we have an opportunity to re-engage that practice, so we'll address it, we'll put it that way.
That's it.
Okay,
We've made it to the end. I'm done.
thank you. Great job. The break was relaxing.
Yeah, it was.
And we have Christmas and New Year's, huh?
Yeah, also that was stuffed in there somewhere. I managed to stay home for a whole week. It was exciting.
Good, staycations are good.
Yeah.
Alrighty, now I'm gonna move forward into the business agenda. Moving forward under administration, we have a motion to appoint Susan Chisinowski to the position of Code Enforcement Officer effective January 1st, 2019.
So moved. Seconded.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed?
I'm sorry, I do have a question, not about this, but can we start to work with your office there and get some information to council once, some county managers about where we're at in certain code enforcement efforts, just in general?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just like a report to us about where some benchmarks, where we're at, so if we need to turn the tap on here and turn it down over there, we can.
Mhm. Is there any, I mean, do you want to just maybe do some brainstorming
Yeah,
about
I mean,
what?
To me, like timelines to compliance.
I mean, and the whole thing. Sorry.
No, I was saying, you know, like we have monthly reports from a lot of other segments, you know, building inspection and that sort of thing. Maybe we could just.
Yeah, I mean, since this
I
is.
believe that's a part of it
I thought
already.
so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought so.
I may not have done my
Well,
homework.
why don't we just go over it together? I mean, we'll take a look at it. I'll make sure, because I know they created that report at least once, but, you know, I'll double check.
Well, you know, in line with your thinking, you know, I've been pushing this Gantt charts and timelines and making sure that the public knows where we are on different initiatives and to try to put them on the web. And so we're working with the manager's office on that. So my comment would be to try to follow that same model so people know, all right, this is my timeline for compliance, that, if I am in violation, how to, come into compliance and not be stressed out. And obviously we don't want to put people in undue duress and make their lives miserable. We just want them to come into compliance within things that are important to the community.
Yeah,
So,
I was just looking at it from the perspective of like, I've seen some properties which I know we've done the full court press on, which now have been, or up for sale, people are looking at them, agents are coming in and out. So they've gone from sitting this time last year doing nothing, potentially being a future demolition project, to being someone's house in a year. That's really good, that's a really good thing to actually see, and I'd like to quantify that better, to know,
okay,
just to see,
those are the types of, you're looking for metrics on.
yeah, some metrics on some, yeah, not so much, about
Oh,
just
the results.
the results of what we've seen thus far.
Yeah, well, I can say, and I mean, more than happy to kind of take a look at the way that we record things and
So
see
you're-
how we post.
Yeah, I mean,
So a progress report
just-
slash
I mean, you don't have to get
outcomes
I-
report.
and drill down to.
This was something that, and this was back before I even got the new desk in the office, so that was, like a different era in time, maybe all the way back in September or something that we were working on, looking at. The way that it displays in the code enforcement GIS map will show, you can kind of filter it, so it's how many violation entries that you had in, like, let's say the past month or couple months or something, and then how many are still open. So, how many have been opened and then closed because they've been resolved in one way or another. So that might be a good way that we could track that. And I'll just check in with Susan and Catherine on that, because they're the ones that compile that information. That might be living somewhere in the reports already, but I'll just double check, because I know there was a little bit of fiddling they had to do with how they wanted to put that all together and track it.
Yeah, I want to have something more than just my anecdotes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can tell you just my general knowledge, although I don't have numbers in front of me, that I've been told by season that we're getting really excellent compliance on the low level stuff. I mean, there are a couple that are always, but for the most part, I just encourage people to give us a call if they're struggling to figure out how to solve something, because we'd rather work with people to kind of get to the right place rather than kind of be the ominous enforcer.
I'm gonna call a 5-minute recess. So,
You kidding?
okay? Mayor, if you have to go.
Sorry.
If, Mayor, if you have to go, if you need to go home, you go. Means.
On this side of the town there?
Yeah, I have like a line that I usually pay where it's like. I have one that's council plus mayor and then council plus mayor.
I didn't see your van there like a lot. You're trying to exit the street, I was listening to your van there. Disappeared. I haven't seen your van there.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
Wow. Or I'd see it other nights.
No, it's not.
Some people who sell in coffee shops. I get along both sides. I get along with everybody. I walk in and out of Hi, Fred.
How are you?
Oh, you guys take breaks like this.
This is the first time.
Hey.
Oh, well, that's
Hello.
interesting.
Hi, I'm Mandy. I live on Hawthorne.
Neighbors. So they're not quite neighbors.
Yeah,
We have a little bit. Yeah.
That's a nice.
Oh.
You live in Stewart's? Stewart?
Did you mean?
The brick building.
That's not how it works. They all have numbers. Sorry.
Wow.
My version.
What?
Yeah, sorry, it didn't mean for my, I was just writing all the things down in my notes.
It's all right.
I have this much to talk about, again. Oh, yeah. Oh, interesting.
That's why
I see, yeah, I've never done that before, but I can.
Mine had it.
Alright, so we're gonna, well,
They were going in. Maybe that was a second ago.
Right.
Sorry, we're having too much. See, that's all you have to do.
Time's up.
they're like, hey, look.
What?
Okay, we're taking the whole time.
You stick the cops on.
Alright, we're back. Thanks. I'll pass out up here. Alright. Alright, moving forward with the business, the agenda and under administration. A motion to appoint Angela Palchowski to Well, we skipped over. No, we didn't.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
No, it's crossed out.
A motion to appoint Angela Palchowski to the Recreation Board for the vacant term expiring on September 30th, 2022.
So moved.
Second. Questions?
Replacing somebody, or just adding her, or how does that work?
So a term expired and we're fulfilling that. So that she will be filling, what is Linda Breeden's seat.
Why did we act on any of those two applications that we got from two residents?
Well, you could, but you have to have a motion to appoint.
So are you saying that we had,
Two other people that,
Well, we had one, we had one, well, hold on. Do we want to do?
Linda Breeden and the one in the back.
Well,
That is.
yeah. Well, we're going through a restructure of the rec board, so this plays into,
There's no vacancy.
yeah, there's other vacancies, but the first person that I'd like to appoint would be Angela Palchowski. She's currently leading the charge on Crafton Celebrates. So this goes into the broader conversation about what is Crafton Celebrates, how does it fall within our organization. So the concept, going back to a concept that you have been advocating for, is that these organizations have representation on the rec board. So Crafton Celebrates is an organization by resolution that has support of the community and of council, and has financial support. So to bring that in line with the expectation that it be part of the rec board, Angela would be the candidate. She was the president of that. She put a lot of effort into Crafton Celebrates. So to bring Crafton Celebrates fully into the rec board, having Angela have a seat on that board would make most sense, since it's an ongoing activity. Do you have any other questions about the wisdom in
So
that?
you're saying there are or will be other openings?
Yes. Are there current vacancies currently in addition to this one here?
One.
So it's one of the
additional.
vacancies,
Yeah.
right, 2 other applicants. Right.
Right, so what we're looking at is what Marcia was talking about, re-examining what representation we might need from other organizations that
Right.
we might be funding. Is that,
Or would want to be granting to.
yeah,
We're
that's what I
not,
mean, yeah.
right. So, yes, council as a whole, and once we get to the committee's part of the discussion here, we'll talk about what we want that
to be, but to move the ball forward with Crafton Celebrate, since we have, approved fireworks, there's a realignment on the schedule to discuss, Crafton Celebrates. We didn't dissolve Crafton Celebrates. We technically could appoint another committee, but we want to reorganize the entire structure of Crafton Celebrates and bring them underneath the rec board. And that goes in line with the new financing structure, and the manager can discuss the
Yeah.
finances of Crafton Celebrates.
So basically, we've had this sort of relationship with the organization where we have confirmed their officer appointments for the committee, supported them in different ways, like recently paying for the fireworks. They've kind of been our community days, essentially, without necessarily having the official banner of, this is the Crafton Community Day. And we were helping them out with the finances, approving invoices and things like that already. So when I was taking a look at the budget for 2019, my feeling was kind of, if we're going to be handling any sort of money for Crafton Celebrates as an entity, with an organization, what have you, that it needed to be officially represented in the borough budget. So something new that was created this year was the Celebrates Fund. And right now, since we're kind of still learning a little more in detail, how things would fit into different line items as they're broken out this next year. Right now, there's sort of just a 60,000-ish is how much they tend to take in and spend. It's largely been a self-contained, funding effort, I guess. Mostly self-sustaining, but we've been given a hand with fireworks. That's continued to be in the budget.
So how would putting Angela on the rec board, I'll bite on this one, play devil's advocate with Marcia. Why would the rec board be more transparent than just having Crafton Celebrates come here and give us the reports that they typically do?
Because they are looking to reorganize that Crafton Celebrates as a committee. They're looking for more borough involvement. They want to have a more recognized position. And reality is, we need to recruit people from those efforts into the rec board. I've spoken to members of the rec board, and they said that it needs to be re-energized, it needs new membership, and that we need, they vocalize an interest in having Crafton Celebrates as part of the rec board.
So when we were looking for oversight to oversee maybe, just spitballing here, but like an invoice or something, we would then be working with the rec board, it would be...
Well, so we were already approving the invoices as part of the bills list, so that was what created my recommendation that we really needed to have it actually as a fund. So the funds that came in with Crafton Celebrates were, confirmed, protected on paper, basically. These are funds that are for Crafton Celebrates, and they'll be expended on Crafton Celebrates. But also, this is kind of recognizing officially the relationship between the organizational structure that this really has become Crafton's community days, and every other community says, where I previously worked in Robinson, there's the Robinson Township Autumn Festival, and they get all this support with public works, setting up electrical, and for example, paying for fireworks, things like that. So if we're already handling all their funds by helping maintain a bank account and supporting them with our staffing, they essentially are functioning as our community day, just without the title. So the thinking was, we're officially anointing them as this and giving this the title of, this is a borough function, and so we can support you financially on our budget with that.
So what would be an example of another type person, like Angela, who is the head of Crafton Celebrates, or the figurehead there?
I think the crocodiles would be another example.
So we would be looking then to have that kind of...
No, I don't think Crafton Celebrates is a very unique situation. So by resolution, and I believe it was 1976, that was it, that there was a resolution by council to have a Crafton Celebrates, and over time, it has evolved, as recently as 2 years ago, when Mr. O'Brien asked that council financially support part of the fireworks. We embraced that. This past year, we supported the electrical, and as we re-envision what Crafton Celebrates is, and as the manager has detailed what Community Days it is and how it would be supported by the community, it becomes very clear that for it to move into the 21st century, it needs a level of support from the borough and structure, and to make sure it's sustainable. And so that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that there is some institutional knowledge that's carried through through our administration, to ensure that they're not stressing out about having the treasurer. So as recently as this past Friday, we met with Ms. Palczewski about that situation, and about, that they'd like to, ensure that they don't have an issue like they had last year with some gaps in leadership on the treasury
Provide
side.
administrative support,
right.
really, yeah.
And so we sort of just try to streamline that, so their treasurer is our treasurer, all right? We have our people looking through the bills list, so we just need to streamline it. Angela would have a seat on there. We would have direct communication with Angela as we did in the past, but really it just gives her a position on the board, and it sort of shows everybody what the new model will be as we get into the conversation about what the rec board will be. So I know Ms. Damitz has been very vocal on the subject, as well as Parks. So we really need to bring people into this discussion, just as we have over the engineering. We need to do the same thing with our recreational activities. And some of the feedback that I've personally received as a councilman have been, we don't have a lot of focus on our recreational assets, and maybe we need to have some organization and activities around the assets that we have in the community. So if people mentioned, was it Zumba?
There are all kinds of
Different things,
people get excited about, yeah.
and sort of inform us where we need to go on these things. So a lot of the folks, I think, that have been on the board acknowledge that we need to recruit the next generation. But this is a strategic placement on the rec board to make sure that Crafton Celebrates is represented, and council has some interaction with them formally.
Well, thank you, that's what I needed to hear.
Alrighty. Any other questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
No,
All that oppose?
fine.
Okay, one position. Okay. Do you want to do roll call? Okay. Alright, we have 4, so motion passes. Ms. Damitz, if you'd like to make a recommendation to the rec board, just send me an email or tell the manager, and we can put a motion forward and we can discuss that. Alright, so, and that's the only way.
It was done the way it was supposed to. The letters had a deadline, 2 came in, and
Well, I reached out, I personally had reached out to Angela and I recruited her. So that's different, I asked for this appointment. I asked for her, and we had a
but the
meeting.
Cougars or CIT don't.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Part of this then?
Yeah, well,
So we're just
with
picking and
respect,
choosing.
yeah, no, it's not, I mean, so not to conflate the issues, so your initiative is very important, but we already have an initiative of Crafton Celebrates that just needed some structure and to provide some sustainability through our administration. So putting the Crafton Celebrates as an activity and having the representative on the rec board, I think was about due time. So, and again, if it doesn't work out, we can change it
Does
next
the
year.
rec board still meet?
From what I understand, yeah. Is that true? I mean, and that, the fact that we don't exactly know what their structure is and how frequently they meet, and what activities they're engaged in, I would say that our rec board and our activities, we have a lot of great volunteers, but it's nebulous, and it's organic. There's not a lot of structure to it, so you have a lot of volunteerism at certain points of the year, and people that have had all this institutional knowledge, but to try to convey that to the next generation or provide the next generation of volunteers a foot in the door, so to speak, to be involved and have representation in the Borough of Crafton's rec board, I think is what we're trying to get to. So if there's volunteers and people that would like to be on the rec board in the future, this year, and we want to restructure the overall format of the rec board, this body can do that. So just let us know what we want, what we need to be doing. So I'll move forward from that so we can have a broader conversation about committees down in the discussion. And then we'll move forward with Public Works. A motion to approve pay application number 2 in the amount of $68,825.75 to A. Felina Construction for the Clearview Avenue Road Reconstruction Project Phase 5 as recommended by the Borough Engineer.
So moved.
Second.
Is this the last payment?
No.
Oh, okay. Do we know if they're fixed that pothole, not pothole, but the manhole issue?
Yes, of course, they will address it in spring.
Okay.
So the elevation will be corrected.
Yes.
When I'm aware that a pay app is the final payment, I try to make sure to note in the motion it's
Okay.
the final, yeah.
Okay.
So do we know though, they should fix that by spring though, so it should be before the final payment?
I mean, you can hold the final payment if you're not
Yeah.
satisfied.
Yeah, it's, it depends, I mean, there's rules on how much you can hold versus what's the cost of the repair,
The
so.
retainage, basically.
Right, I mean, even sometimes holding on to excess of retainage isn't necessarily allowed. You can't hold $100,000 in retainage for a $5,000 repair. So as long as we're
I think it's
reasonable.
150%
Of
of the cost of the repair, I think.
Yeah, so as time goes on, if the contractor says, hey, we want to settle out, then we'll go in and do an estimate and 150% of that and then hold that amount. But
Okay.
so far, they seem okay with it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And while we're on the public works subject, I just didn't kind of make it into the bullet points, I'm sorry, but Rob, did you want to talk at all about the water pipe repair that we've been?
We still have the motion.
Oh, sorry. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Did we get all the ayes?
You didn't ask if anybody else opposed?
Yeah, anybody that opposes? All right. Hearing no opposition, motion passes, so now, okay.
I'm sleepy, sorry, it's been a long day. Rob, would you like to share with us some information about the water pipe repair?
Well, it's not just the water pipe, it's actually the water lines inside the Borough building. We did everything in-house, all new copper lines that runs through the buildings. We had a situation where we had a leak in the basement area in the paramedic room, and a leak in the hallway going out to the emergency exit down in the basement. What we did, we didn't repair those pipes that were old corroded galvanized lines. We replaced all the water lines in the Borough building, with all new copper lines. Purchased a new ProPress tool, made it a lot easier and accessible for us. The lines that we took out, I think, I have one on my desk, I didn't bring it in the council meeting, but the galvanized lines themselves were probably 3/4 full with crud.
They're galvanized?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yes.
They
galvanized
weren't
pipe.
copper, so they didn't have copper, you didn't have copper here, but you did.
Pardon me?
No.
No copper at all before.
No.
No.
So I did get an estimated cost 2 years ago for a plumber to come in. I think he gave me his estimated cost without hot water tank installations was approximately $22,000. We did it for $3,000 was the cost for the new ProPress and the copper tubing and fittings. Probably another, I don't have a tally yet, but it's probably another $4,000. So we did for $7,000, saving the borough about $20,000, or $19,000 doing this, so. And it's all new copper lines, so. Can't even drink the water like we used to do out of the water fountain we used to have in the first floor. But all new copper lines throughout the building, I think, pressure's up. I mean, it's just a total improvement for the whole building.
Sorry, I was
Good job,
excited, you
Rob.
can see why I
Good
jumped the
job.
gun.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, so apologies to anyone who ended up on the phone with me while they were doing the drilling. It was a little loud, but we made it, Steve. We made it through.
Great. Should put the borough in this old house, this old borough building. All right, moving forward, planning and zoning. A motion to adopt ordinance number 1653, amending chapter 197 of the Crafton Borough Code of Ordinances, subdivision and land development to require compliance with the chapter 190 of the Borough Crafton Code of Ordinances, stormwater management, and to amend roof and drain requirements.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, any questions, comments? Do you want to discuss this a little further, break it down?
I'll turn it over to Steve.
Very simply, this incorporates the stormwater management regulations that we adopted in end of November into our subdivision and land development ordinance.
Right, and again, required under Act 167?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? All right. Move forward, motion to advertise an ordinance amending Chapter 90 of the Crafton Borough Code of Ordinances, code enforcement to require business and multifamily residence premises registration and inspection.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. Any questions, comments? All right. Hearing no questions or comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All that opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. All right, moving forward to discussion items. We have the ALOM legislative dinner on the 19th? 17th, sorry.
Thursday.
Yes.
Okay, is that coming through?
Mhm.
All right. And who's gonna be attending?
We have you. Wait, do you want to go?
I want to get out of the house, yeah.
Take my place.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
if you want to
I'm
swap,
happy
that's
to do
great.
that.
'Cause we passed the RSVP deadline,
That's
so.
fine.
I'm Khalil Perry for all they know.
Okay, you can on Perry. I believe Fred
You can fill in the
also
make an-
RSVP'd, so we've got 3 council members.
Hot dog.
Nice.
They do have food, so,
Great.
Are there other adults there?
yeah, mostly adults, yes.
Well,
Don't think I
You
saw
have
any
some
kids
cabin
before.
fever from being locked in the house with 2 kids?
I do.
All right,
I'll be there too.
all right.
I'm
All right, so we'll see what is going on legislatively. Hey, good news is our government's open here. We're open for business.
Yeah, no federal grants, so we've been doing pretty good so far.
Okay, gonna move forward with the council committee's discussion. We discussed that, I believe it was in November, last meeting in November?
That sounds right.
So, per the Borough Code, as President Council, I have the ability to appoint committees and their members. We're gonna go through the structure. Mayor Bloom and Mr. Amendola, you are on the Public Safety Committee. Under Administration Committee, we have Claudia Perry and Abby Rosario. In Public Works, we have myself, Philip Lavasser, and Brad Kraus. Parks and Rec, we have Marcia Damitz and Alice Glasser. We also are going to have a committee of the whole. So our first meeting of the month will be basically a round robin committee meeting. So everybody here will have an opportunity to listen to the discussion among the committee members and participate. But those committee members will have the responsibility to, bring to council their investigations or findings, what they're working on. And that way, management of the borough has an understanding of what the public's issues are and what the projects that council and our members want to pursue during 2019. So pretty straightforward. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything intense. You don't have to write up a huge report, or if you'd like to keep it as short as a bullet point list and turn it into the manager so we can have it on a handout. If not, just bring it to the meeting, and that way we know where we'd like to go throughout 2019. So that's where we are there. In the community of the whole, essentially anything that doesn't really fit into a nice category there under these committees will just be discussed as a committee of the whole. So pretty straightforward, and that way the manager and the public get to hear all the conversation about the different initiatives and issues that we see in the community. And then, again, we will still have a business section. As always, we have quite a bit of bills this past month. We,
To be fair, they're a little left over from.
we had quite a bit of bills, so every meeting we'll still have to do some business. Obviously, there's just schedules that they maintain with the checks. But the intent is that the first meeting really be a full discussion meeting. And if we can get it.
We're not gonna have like, not to interrupt you, but just to clarify before we move on, we're not gonna have like a discussion meeting like set up like this. We're just gonna come with our thoughts and riff on them as we go, essentially.
So, under the structure, so we'll allot time. So the question is, how many minutes do we really want to provide to each committee, or is this something that, no, and this is where we can say it's a 10-minute discussion, and we as a body can limit the discussion. But it's really just to provide some structure. I think the committees as they're structured now really represent the interest of council, and everybody has a lot of crossover. So please don't be limited just because you're not on the committee doesn't mean you don't have input. You have input every meeting to all the issues. But for instance, Brad and I attended a meeting with Gateway Engineers. We're on the Public Works Committee, so we're going to be going to those meetings. If any other member of council would like to attend, you'd have to please notify RJ and go through me, because you can't have more than the three of us in a room, because it then becomes a quorum. So unless it's a function, that's Crafton celebrates, or any other like activity like A-Lawn is not one of those issues that would come up under a quorum. But if you all want to come to the engineering meeting, well, we might as well just have an engineer come and talk to us and take care of it.
And just to report, our first committee meeting was this presentation you saw today.
Yes.
This is exactly what we saw on Monday.
Yes.
Or Friday.
Yes. So I know Ms. Perry's been doing a lot of great work with turnkey taxes, and the manager and she and turnkey taxes will hopefully be providing some insight our next committee meeting as to the direction and what they've been learning over the past 6 months to, you've been working on this initiative now a year plus. So that's where we're going with council committee. If you have an issue with the committee structure, please reach out to me, and we make any changes. But hopefully we can move forward peacefully into 2019. Fred, are you all right with the arrangement for public safety? Okay. And if there's any tweaking to the name of the committee, just let me know if you'd like to have more structure to that. So move forward with community announcements. Really, we all have to thank the Crafton Elves. And speaking of the park and recs and all the activities that we have go on throughout the year, if it wasn't for the hardworking volunteers, we wouldn't have the nice holiday scene that we had here in Borough. And people throughout the West End area really acknowledge that Crafton does a nice job. And so thank you to our volunteers for everything they've done. As it says here, we had enough funds that were raised via the donation and sponsorship to fully convert the Borough building over to LEDs. And I was speaking with Ms. Kasurik, and she said that they're actually commercial grade lights. So they went through the additional effort to procure those, and so hopefully they'll last quite a few years. So again, thank you, Mr. Knock, you're in the office, in the room here, so again, thank you for everything you've done. And anybody else that was a part to those activities, really thank you, and I hope to see more people come out and volunteer. Moving forward to the Clean Slate Law, Representative Dan Deasy's office sent out an email about a program that will help folks that have had issues with their record, and this basically would expunge or seal their record for issues that occurred over 10 years ago. So if you had, let's say, a DUI or traffic infractions, issues that would potentially show up during an employment search, basically your record would be sealed away. So you can look for that, the details of the Clean Slate Law. Obviously, I did not write the piece of legislation, I don't know all the nitty-gritty details, but we're going to post that information at the Borough, so if you need to take advantage of that, please look to that information or call Mr. Deasy's office in the West End. They're great to speak with. So, yeah, so let's start 2019 with a path to a clean slate. That's what we have here. So moving forward with additional citizen comments, Mr. Saba, if you'd like to come forth, please address council.
So, my name is Anthony Saba, 567 Broadhead. First, I just want to say thank you to Mayor Tusco. She's been doing a great job. Even ideas I bring up to her, something I see, like leaves or stairs, she's got already on the pipeline, already working on it. So, I want to say thank you. Big difference from before, being able to actually go into a Borough building and talk to the manager is in a nice manner, kind of nice also. So, I actually brought this issue up. I think this is the third time. So parking on Crandall Avenue, right in front of St. Philip's Church. So I actually sent a video to Manager Trusco. There is, so we're sitting on top of Broadhead Boulevard on the avenue. Traffic is parked all along Collision Center, all the way down Crandall Avenue, and there's a mail truck parked on the opposite side. So one of the points you brought up about Balancing Ave, Boston Street, is public safety. If a fire truck were trying to get through, you can't, because there's cars coming up from Route 60 along there. But not just that, we cannot see. If you're trying to pull out at the intersection of Broadhead and Belvedere, it's hard enough to see right to left. But then you look to your right, and there's in the video you can see, all of a sudden you see cars coming. You cannot safely actually see to your right without pulling out. Then as soon as you pull to the left, there's cars coming up the hill, and there's cars parked on the right that make it extremely hard to navigate around. And you'll see, if you go down, their parking lot down the bottom is completely empty. So people are attending church services, and this was a Saturday afternoon around 4:30. So this is a busy time for people going out to Robinson for grocery shopping, or down to the plaza to go to Jungle or whatever. So there's a lot of traffic going through. In fact, this past weekend, we were coming up past the Borough building, and traffic was almost backed up to the Borough building just because church is letting out. And there was a vehicle parked there pretty much the entire day that was stopping traffic from going down and then allowing cars to come up. So, and I know discussing it with Manager Susko, one of the things was that Borough is the one who has to make the decision. But I do know it's a state road, so I'm not sure exactly how.
Yeah, part of it is.
Yeah.
So, since our conversation, I did some research with the chief and or the police chief, and I sent the video to him and everything, and I believe that part of that is still State Route 60, but the one that goes through the traffic circle is actually an alternate State Route 60, which means that we have a little bit more ability, I believe, to enforce where we permit parking and no parking.
So is the Friday Church part of Borough, or is that part of state? Exactly where Broadhead and Belvedere meet?
I would have to double check with him, because we talked about this a little bit before the holidays, but I believe that is the alternate State Route 60, and then it goes more, the main route is up towards, I think, Noble and Bradford, if I'm getting that right. So I think we do have some jurisdiction in the area you're concerned about to decide. I mean, that would be a council decision whether they want to take a look at it and enforce no parking in a broader area than it is right now.
The alternate route goes from West Crafton Avenue to Dinsmore.
Yes, yeah, so that's pretty much the section that we're talking about here.
So the actual Route 60 is Dinsmore, Noble, Steuben, in both directions. Dinsmore used to be two-way. The borough back then, years ago, made an agreement with the state to split Route 60, and Route 60 then came up Churchill, what we call Churchill, West Crafton Avenue, to Dinsmore, or through Bradford to Dinsmore. So we're responsible for the maintenance of the highways through that area. But Dinsmore Avenue is Route 60, Noble Avenue from Dinsmore to Steuben is Route 60, and then Steuben out of the road. So what the area you're talking about by St. Philip's Church is the alternate area that was split by an agreement with PennDOT years ago. So as far as the parking situation, it's at council's discretion. In the years gone by, they never posted that because it was generally just affected on Sundays, for church services, okay? There's been complaints in the past concerning that, and you're right about they'll park on Churchill but won't walk up the hill from the lower parking lot. So if council elects to make that no parking, post that no parking, they can do that. They would have to check with the solicitor in the end,
The only thing I'm asking for is a sensible solution, because as of right now, Broadhead right now, with as many apartment complexes are on the other end, there's quite a bit of foot traffic. So, I mean, it's already hard enough for vehicles to kind of navigate, but then when you have people trying to walk, it kind of makes it really hard, because the nearest bus stops are down the street. So people are navigating the area, plus you have people going to church. So trying to work with the church, not against them, but come to a sensible solution. That is also a main road too.
I think the question is line of sight issues and whether it poses a danger to the drivers.
parking near the corner, towards the shop, type of thing.
Motion? All right. Okay, I really appreciate you coming. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that council consider this and look at the options and alternatives.
So we need a traffic study to.
Traffic study.
Seconded.
I think it's so moved.
She made the motion.
I made the motion.
Okay.
You have to.
To your point, you're dead on, I understand that maybe church can be up for grabs, but some folks that maybe are taking advantage of it, church doesn't last 6.5 hours. In my estimation, I agree with you, I live there, there should be no cars blocking the main thoroughfare where, you're getting down to Steuben down there, so.
I mean, there was a car there for at least 6-7 hours, and if I would have called the borough police, they would have told me there's nothing we can do. You have to go to borough council, because it's not no parking. But not just that, even like working with the church, I mean, in the mornings, every day I go to work, there's a crossbar there. There's somebody that at least has an idea what's going on in traffic. So if the church is doing a special event, or sometimes during a busy time, maybe the solution would be, hey, we have somebody there just ensuring the safety of the vehicles passing through, but not just that, the pedestrians are coming off of Broadhead as well.
Okay. Are there any other citizen comments on the subject? Hearing none.
Question before you adjourn.
Yeah, we're still on the motion. Do you have any comments on this?
On the motion, study.
Can we also study just the crosswalks in that area as well?
So are you saying we'd like to?
I'm just asking a question.
You have the motion?
Yeah, traffic study.
Would that, I guess my clarification before I amend it,
I would make sure that the motion is clear that it includes a crosswalk.
Alice isn't here, but I suspect she would agree with this whole one.
Can you clarify what study?
So we do crosswalks and we're done, because we only painted half the ones we have in the town now.
Well, let me amend the motion first before we debate.
You have to ask Colette if she will amend.
tell me how you want to amend
To
it.
add feasibility of crosswalks in the area as well.
I'll accept it.
And I will accept the second on that.
Okay, so that's the new motion.
All right. Any comments, questions on the motion that's on the floor? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All that oppose? All right, government action, all right. Motion passes, all right, Marcia.
Are we gonna roll then? The, handicap in front of the doctor's office.
Okay.
November 14th, is there any,
I think that's fine.
yeah, is there anything gonna happen, or?
That was something that was pretty much up to council. We did a little bit of looking into it.
I thought we said go ahead and do it.
It,
Did we pass on off to the police, or what do we need
we
to do?
we took a look at it because I think this is one of those issues in which our code has just kind of gotten outdated a bit, so there are ways that we address on-street parking for handicap designations. Certain things like with the placard, but it has to be available for anybody, but when it comes to something like a doctor's office or, you know, I can get the specifics by pulling up the code, but, essentially it doesn't necessarily provide a pathway for something like a doctor's office.
The borough code?
Yes,
or
like the code of ordinances. They're-
Hold on,
Crafton
Crafton code?
Yes, Crafton's, I see what you're asking.
Right.
Yes, Crafton's code of ordinances
Mhm.
doesn't really address something like a specific situation for providing a handicap parking spot there, but I.
For on-street?
The library got one in front of their library. What's the difference?
Yeah.
I can
Okay,
take
The
a look at
library
it.
can have them, why can't that business have one?
Yeah, I can take a look at it. I apologize, I didn't realize it was gonna, you know, I would have brought a little more detailed information, so I can always do that
so,
for the next council meeting.
Mayor, is there any issues with putting a designated handicap spot? We've done it in front of the libraries, or anything that you would hesitate?
Are we talking at the doctor's office?
Dr.
Mhm.
Phillips, yes.
Yeah, building? Yeah, you could, I'm thinking council could make that, you know, designate a handicap spot in front of the,
Okay.
Oh,
Marcia, would you like to make a motion to move this forward?
Yes. I make
All
a
right.
motion that we, put the handicap accessible parking in front of Dr. Phillips'
And
office.
what address is that?
96, I think.
So is that an approval of a handicap parking spot there?
Yes.
Or, oh, okay.
Who's that?
I think
Okay.
it's 96, brother.
92.
That sounds right.
92.
92.
I just want to have, for the record, I want to have the right address for the 92 Bradford. Okay. Your motion?
92.
Second.
Motion second.
Okay.
Oh.
Do you want a second?
Yes,
I'll
in a
take it off.
second.
You too.
Any questions?
Let's just go to-
We're gonna find out who's second.
Wow, this is a popular motion.
You did, okay, oh, well, you're going for a record.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right,
And on the sign for the Crafton Shopping Center.
Rob?
I have them, they're probably, I'm gonna have to put them up on the state, traffic poles. I'm gonna have to work with the state to do it, at the intersections. They're a little larger than we anticipated, so I'm gonna have to work with the state to install them at those intersections.
And Ms. Kelly said that she would provide reimbursement or partial reimbursement for our efforts on getting the signage.
Okay.
So we can figure out what those costs are, and so we could reach out to her, that'd be great. Okay.
And,
Did we vote on that motion?
What?
Did I like just blank out?
Which part?
Yes.
Yeah, we voted
Okay,
on
I'm
it.
sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, go ahead.
and Ewing Road, is that ever gonna be paved? Are we paving alleys this year? What?
So Ewing Road, we have applications in through the dirt and gravel road program through the Allegheny County Conservation District, and the engineer and the Public Works Director's office is, making sure that there's follow through on that. So the answer is, it's not on the schedule right now to be paid. We're waiting to see if we're going to be approved. We also have to do some water management, improvement, so we have to put some BMPs in there, just make sure the water's being managed adequately, but right now, it's open, right?
We were denied that grant,
We were.
yeah, so.
What's that? I'm sorry.
The Ewing, the dirt and gravel, yeah, they came back and they didn't,
We got rejected.
yeah,
Okay.
so we're gonna have to explore some other
All right, so then
funding
we'll,
avenue for it.
okay, well then, let's look at the road program and let's finish it.
And with the alley. A neighbor fell in the alley and
All right, well,
got the rib, and I mean,
I would say let's get a meeting together between you, Rob, Brad, the manager, and I, over the next, not next week, but the following week would be good, or we could try to do it maybe this Friday. And let's sit down and go through your list and try to knock off some of the punch list items that you have.
okay, the last thing, anything with the bottom of Churchill. Is that ever gonna be fixed for the handicap?
That's the property owner's responsibility. And that handicap ramp, it's the property owner's responsibility to do a repair. It was included with the CDBG funds.
As I said 3 years ago, and I asked if
We-
it was still underwater.
It was included.
So this is a code enforcement issue? Is this a code enforcement issue?
Yeah, unfortunately, it would be, but it was submitted 2 years ago
It was included this year as well in
for
our
the CDBG fund for handicap ramp
application.
improvements.
So the question is, does council want to pursue it with the landowner, or do we want to do it in kind? Is that the question?
Well, I mean, there's a maintenance issue, but there's also whether we're going to redo the ramp if we receive the CDBG funds. I mean, it's included in the application, it's just still, we're waiting.
Can you
to
be
go through that
reimbursed
process.
for activities that you engaged if we do receive it? Do we have to wait, or can we go ahead and we get?
So that would be for reconstruction.
You're right.
So, Rob, do you feel that a
Yeah, the ramp
reconstruction of
itself-
the ramp falls under the code?
It needs reconstructed. Not sure why they didn't do it when they did this, Steuben Street when the state reconstructed that.
Yeah,
Should have been actually put that because it deteriorated. It was probably done when they did West Crafton with concrete, but it's in a poor condition, it needs done.
All right, well, let's take this conversation offline and see what kind of options we have. Taking offline doesn't mean that we don't.
In a couple of years.
Right, so we'll address it over the next couple of weeks. Somebody else have any discussion items, concerns? All right,
Real quick, do we ever get to the bottom of whether Waste Management is or is not picking up Christmas trees, or is that just some
I've
guy?
been told that they're not, so we've been having public works going around
So-
picking them up for people.
We may need to place something on our website to let folks know that trees are not gonna be accepted, because tonight I've seen.
They're still putting, okay.
They're still putting trees out. I don't think folks are gonna realize
Did they-
that, and then they're not gonna bring them back.
well, per our contract, I thought it was covered under the contract.
I know.
I'll have to take a look, I don't recall it explicitly discussing
We're,
Christmas trees.
yeah, we're getting to a point where the waste handlers usually stop, and then the county has their program, right?
They do, yeah, that's the primary way that I'm aware of recycling Christmas trees is the county.
Do we have that on the website?
I'll have to take a look, I
Okay.
think it's passed already.
It was advertised somehow, whether it was Savvy app.
Yeah, I thought we put it on
Not put it out in
Savvy.
the trash. I don't know if it was the county, but I think it was Savvy Station or somewhere, it was
Right.
advertised not to put it out in the trash.
Yeah.
Put it, turn it into a certain center.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The council recommends it.
Yeah, let's just confirm the county's dates, and then we'll figure out what to do with them. So anybody that has a Christmas tree, just call the manager's office. And please don't use process, don't take your neighbor's tree from another community. Tell Crafton to take it, okay? So, with that being said,
Heard that one, yeah.
oh, there's all kinds of interesting things that happen. So, hearing no additional citizen comments or discussion items from council, I'm going to move to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, and have a good evening.